What's up, photography chat peoples? Welcome to another episode here. Just gonna get Peter on here. And hey, Steph, how's it going? Hope everyone's having a good week so far. There he is. Get Pete up here. Shout out to Brian Brooks for the sweet Baby Me t-shirt. What's up, man?
Yo,
You got a hat now. I like this.
it's my
My
favorite hat.
my beard is very warm, Steph. I do like it's nice having like a big beard back again. But like getting older is weird because I'm getting all of this like white in my beard
Oh,
now.
my beard is totally going gray. It's totally going gray. It's brutal.
It's so weird. It
Yeah,
just more and more all the time. I'm like, holy shit. This
you're old.
yeah. Yeah, it's like I wish I could give you my beard, but I don't think it really quite works like that. And
No, no. Well, I
like
mean, I've definitely had like growth, serious growth. It kind of just ebbs and flows like
what's up,
the
Alex?
tide.
Yeah, it is. So I shaved everything down this year, like bicked my head and
Didn't you have
immediate.
like a mohawk for a while?
No, I didn't do a mohawk. I had like just a poof, like a green poof for a bit. I missed the green poof. That was fun. What's up, Jeff? Holy shit. Geostrat is the first band I ever played in
Nice.
ever in my life was with Jeff. We played in a band in our hometown, Kimberly, called Dempton. We were a ska funk punk band with bagpipes. And that was one of the most terrifying experiences I had tuning the bass up to A to play with the bagpipes because it didn't feel like you should tune a bass that high. Like the strings started making weird noise, and I'm just like, if this thing like pops a string, I just pictured like going to like stabbing my jugular or something and like dying
Or
from
the neck just kind of collapsing on itself.
yeah, which and it's wild to because I my bass guitar sits in my living room and it's wild to imagine that I bought that thing in like 1997 or 1998 and I think I've swiped on people on Tinder that like are around the same vintage as
It's also a good indication as to why your beard is going gray. But yeah.
yeah.
Oh, back in the '90s when I bought this bass when I was like 20 years old.
Yeah, dude, I was still in high school when I bought that shit. So getting old is definitely been an interesting thing. So thank you for joining, Jeff. That's cool. And we've got Jen here from Texas. Thank you for joining, Jen and Brian. Brian and Missy Man, I love you, dude. And Alize, thank you for joining. I wish I could go to Montreal soon to see you. And yeah, so thank you for joining us for episode 10.
Sure, man.
We've got do you prefer Pete or Peter?
I go by both.
Okay. Um,
So most of my friends call me Pete, or Pissy. That's an old nickname that
wait, pissy?
Pissy Pete.
What? Like, cause grumpy or cause
Yeah, grumpy. Yeah, no,
okay.
not yeah, not the alternative, which which has been mistaken for that as well. But
That's
I'm
fair.
not. I'm Sweet Pete now. I'm not Pissy Pete anymore.
Oh yeah, sweet Pete. If you ever need chain mail, anyone that's on here, you should follow Artless Heathen. She has become a chain mail expert, and she's very talented and also a fantastic artist. So
Awesome.
definitely encourage following her. Um, so yeah, thank you for joining for episode 10. Pete is a very interesting cat. We talked virtually for the first time earlier today, and we've been chatting a bunch on the grams over the last few months. Um, and like a lot of my guests, we have a similar connection through a fantastic photographer, Jason Lee. And outside of like your practice, which I would love to learn more about because the art of the large format are something that fascinate me. Um, One of the things I'm very curious about, and I know maybe a few other people are curious about too, is your cross-country adventure in the land yacht.
Yeah. So where do you want me to start? You want to start at the beginning?
Yeah, let's start from the top, and then also just, I'll throw it out there to the people that are tuned in. If you have any questions along the way, or like if there's something about like large format that you want to get in as a diversion, please feel free to like jump in. I like to keep it interactive, and I appreciate your guys' engagement with this. And like Steph says, more like sweet pea. Yeah, so I mean, from the top, like I've been fascinated with like the whole idea of the Lincoln even before I knew that Jason had one, because I think I fell in love with that like sort of skateboard looking shape from Grosse Point Blank.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's kind of what got me hooked on those cars anyway. I mean, I sort of grew up in cars like this. I graduated high school in '96, and I remember it was actually my junior high prom. Like, not that I was much of a prom person, but my dad actually drove me to my prom in my junior high prom in like a 1986 Lincoln. It was the
Nice.
same color as Jason, the Lincoln, I should say. But it's I've always had an affinity for Lincolns. It's always been like one of my bucket list cars. A '63 Lincoln is like my bucket list car. That's like the
Mhm.
one that have like black on black hardtop. Like that's the shit. But
Is that the one with the suicide doors?
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I got a
Really
homie that
cool.
lives in Austin that he's got one of those black on black with the suicide doors, and
Yeah. I don't want a convertible. I want like the hardtop. Like
yeah, he's got the hardtop one. It's gorgeous.
they are so sweet. I mean, I've had like '50s cars that like just glide, like along the road, and they're so sweet. But anyway, without diverting too much, so the story with the Lincoln. So for those of you who don't know, like I do professional photography, but I also still assist other photographers. So I was actually on. I sort of blame this other photographer, this guy Topher Cox, who I assist with every once in a while. I was on one of his shoots, and me and the Digitech were just chilling out because we were doing this biomed shoot, and we weren't allowed into the lab. It was just like it was like a super high profile thing that they were doing, and we weren't allowed in. It was just like the photographer and one other person. There you go. And so here we are. Like the Digitech is just scrolling Instagram. I'm just scrolling Instagram, and I follow Jason Lee, and I have no association with Jason Lee other than this car. Or before that, I had nothing. But I just happened to see that he posted it for sale, and I've always wanted one of those cars. And I was thinking, like, how cool would it be to buy that thing and do a road trip in it, and kind of do the same thing, the photo road trip. And basically, like, I just hit him up. Like, I texted my girlfriend, and I was just like, hey, check this out. Like you want to burn some money that we don't have? And her being the car, her being the same sense of adventure that I have, she was like, yeah, let's do it. And she was psyched about. She's a car person too, so she was psyched about doing the car thing.
Nice.
So I hit him up, and I hit him on his feed, and hit him, on his email, and we started a dialogue. And of course, I lowballed him at first. I gave him a quick little story and said, hey, like, I'm a photographer. Maybe you can get to me for nothing, and blah blah blah. Kind of.
Yeah, yeah.
But then we eventually, through a bunch of emails back and forth, like agreed on a price, and basically, like, it was kind of like, I was going after it with this, chasing the story of the photo road trip, and being a steward of this car, and the fact that it was Jason Lee's car, and he did it with did the whole road trip thing with this, and like we were talking about earlier, there's a bunch of people involved,
Yeah.
and like how this car's like has
He
this
drove
crazy legacy, which I was previously unaware of.
Yeah, like he drove it all over Texas for Plainview. It's been all over Oklahoma for the Oklahoma series
Mm-hmm.
that is yet to come out. And like countless other road trips. Like Armand knows a little bit of the history of it, but yeah, it's
Yeah, yeah. So basically, it's like I hit him up, and it's just like, well, let's do this. And I wanted to get some photos of him and stuff, and I asked him, like, like, I need some photos of you with the car, because it's kind of like without him, it's just a '94 Lincoln. There's no story behind the car. So
yeah.
he totally agreed, and he said, like, I'll let you photograph me as long as it's on film. Obviously, it was no issue for me. So I flew out there. I actually flew out there. The plan was initially, it's kind of like it all screwed up, but initially, like, I was going to fly out. He was kind of like pressuring me to get it out of his driveway, And I
Yeah.
was like, initially, I was like, oh man, like, like it's going to be tough to arrange. Um, but once I got to his house, I realized why. It's because he had a small driveway and a ton of cars. So like,
Yeah.
obviously that's why he was wanted to get rid of it. But he, I'm trying to think of like exactly how this went. So yeah, so basically, my girlfriend does like horse events. Like she judges horse events, not for a living, but just on the side. And she actually had one in LA on March 22nd. And so the plan was we were going to fly out, grab the car, and fly back, and or not, and drive it back, like leaving March 22nd. But he was like, dude, we got to get rid of. I got to get this thing out of there. And I just didn't want to put him out at all by like at this point because it was like mid-February. I would have been sitting in his driveway for like another 3 weeks, and I didn't want to put him out anymore. So I just flew out for one day. I had a shoot on March 5th. Sorry, the 6th. So I flew out the 4th, drove like from the airport, went straight to his house, and hung out with him, and talked like we just like hung out at his house, did a bunch of photos, and I hopped in the car. I have a friend that lives in LA. We just drove. I drove to her house, and I basically stayed at her house until well, the idea was the 22nd, but what happened was COVID.
Yeah.
So, that horrible 6-letter word, or 5-letter word, whatever the hell it is. So, um, the so yeah, it sat out there for, I was like, we were like on the we canceled our plane tickets like March 21st. First, we were planning on, the plane was to go up the 22nd, and obviously her horse event got canceled. So yeah, the car just sat out there until mid-June. And we were like, we got to get this car back somehow. And I'm like, well, what are we going to do? It's crazy. We just assumed it was crazy out there. And I basically had three options. I could like arrange with my friend that's out there and ship it out, like just have my friend meet the tow truck guy and just have her load it up and ship the thing back, or I just fly out and haul ass back in the thing, or like we actually just do the trip. And we said, screw it, let's just do the trip. So being like just super cautious, the plan was flew out, we stayed with her, my friend, and for like one night, and then we just basically hit the road like camping the whole way. We actually stayed in one hotel in Vegas, and it was totally because we screwed up on the scheduling, and we kind of like messed around too long in Joshua Tree.
Oh
But
shit.
we was just like, it ended up being like, road trips are hard to plan, especially when you have to like schedule your nights. Like we actually had like every night we had to be at a certain location, because all the campgrounds are booked, which is really crazy. Like it was actually hard to find campgrounds that were not booked because that's what people were doing for their vacation. Like everything else was closed, so people were camping.
Oh
So we got reservations for every night, and so it was kind of crazy because um, I'm losing my train of thought. It's like basically it was like um, the way the trip ended up happening, or the way it was panning out. Like the first few days, we kind of just wanted to get up north, um, like up to like Montana, and so we're just kind of basically like trucking through um, all these like southern areas, and we didn't really have a lot of time to spend there. But we ended up really liking Joshua Tree, and ended up screwing around way too long in Joshua Tree. So here we are leaving Joshua Tree at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and we have to get to basically Lake Mead in Nevada. So anybody that's done that drive, it's like 400 miles. And so
yeah.
we realized pretty quickly that we weren't going to make it to the campground until like 11 o'clock. And it was the only campground that was first come, first serve. And because it was like not state land, but it was like a state run campground. It was just one of those, spots that you couldn't make reservations. So we basically were like we're going to be screwed. We're going to roll up and we're going to be sleeping in the car because we're not going to really get a campground. So we basically, while we're driving, the girlfriend was on the phone, like basically trying to find like the safest hotel, and we ended up staying in Vegas. I thought like the safest hotel we knew of, and she had never been to Vegas. We had a whole plan of like pre-COVID. We had a whole plan of like staying in Vegas,
Yeah.
driving along, doing the whole like the Vegas Strip and hanging out. But obviously, with that going on, it was just um,
If
we were just like passing through,
you do end up being able to go back to Vegas sometime, you really got to check out the Neon Museum.
Yeah, that's definitely crazy. Like I actually have friends that do neon, which is really wild. Like I photographed their shop one time.
Oh
Um,
shit, that's
and
awesome.
yeah, they're super cool. It's almost like a super long story, but I know this guy. I know a guy who knows a guy basically, and a friend of mine through another friend of mine ended up working for this guy who bought a neon shop. I mean, it's just a super convoluted story, but anyway, so the guy that knows a guy who now owns this neon shop, he's actually this the guy that collects neon. He has this
Oh,
giant. He's like pretty wealthy dude, and he's got this giant warehouse. It's full of old neon, and so of course, like, what's the next thing? Next step for him is like to buy a neon shop. So yeah, I got to photograph his shop. It's super super cool.
is that in Massachusetts?
Yeah, right in Boston, in Somerville, or just outside of Boston in Somerville.
Oh shit.
Yeah, it's called Neon Williams.
We'll have to talk more about that later.
Yeah, definitely.
Sounds fascinating. Whenever allowed back over the border.
Yeah, no kidding. So basically, I mean, back to the car trip. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, so basically, we stayed in a hotel in Vegas. We did the whole, this was also pre like how people knew how they caught it, right? So it's like the contact stuff was still like they thought people caught it from touching it and having it on the surfaces and stuff. Whereas now they've learned that it's really through like the air.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, we rolled up to this hotel and we got into the hotel room. We spent like an hour like disinfecting everything, like every surface. Like we are just super nervous.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, like think about getting sick on this trip. Like how horrible would that be?
Oh, that would have been brutal.
It would have been brutal. So yeah, like basically we started like the first night was Palm Springs, and then the next night was Vegas, and then the next night after that was Salt Lake City, and then the next night after that was Montana, and that's like Yellowstone. It was like just outside of Yellowstone, on the western side of Yellowstone. That was like really where the trip started, and then we kind of like meandered from there. But it was pretty wild. It was a lot of fun.
So
Um,
were you basically just had like tent, camping gear, and 4x5?
Pretty much, yeah. And even girlfriend had a film camera, which was pretty badass. Like she had this old Canon like point and shoot thing, and she was doing that. But like it's great. Like I brought so many cameras. Like I had my digital. It's like I had my digital just to do some snapshots.
Yeah.
And then I had my twin lens, my Mamiya C330, and
Nice.
then I had my Netar, the little pocket medium format thing.
Oh,
And it's like every camera was like dedicated. Like the Netar was all black and white, 120. The Mamiya C330 was all color, 120. And then I had my the what is it? The Speed Graphic. I don't even know what these things are called, but the Speed Graphic, for handheld, that was all instant stuff, like the instant back stayed on the back on that thing. And then I had my Linhof. That was like the four by five stuff. And then I had my 8x10 because I actually left it in the car
oh,
because I didn't want to fly back with it. So
yeah.
that was still in the car. So I had my 8x10 too, even though I didn't do any shooting with it. But so that's how many cameras I had. I had like 5 cameras. It's pretty
Well,
wild.
you got to shoot 8x10 when you're with Jason.
That's what I did. I did his portraits on 8x10.
Nice.
That's the way to do it. But and then
That
I had it developed at that. I immediately drove to what's that place? Oh crap, I forget the name of it. There's like one of the better film film spots in LA. The one that he goes to.
a freestyle.
No, it's a lab, like a film lab. What the hell's in?
Oh, I can't remember the name. I think it's the one that was in the Our City video with Extraordinary.
Oh, was
Uh,
it? Yeah.
yeah, I can't remember the name of that spot, but I think I know the one you're talking about.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome. Those guys are super great. It's like Luna or something like that. Like some I should, it's like my memory is crap, but I should I should remember this, but I don't. It's like I can remember something from 20 years ago, but I can't remember what I had for breakfast yesterday.
I get that too. I don't know, this year's been a weird year. So when you're on the trip, like what was it like doing a road trip across the country in a pandemic and also shooting large format while you're doing that?
Well, the crazy thing is, it's like out in the middle of nowhere. It's like Trump country, It's like it didn't exist. It was like business as usual. Like
Really?
honestly, we were the outliers wearing the masks. Like we were in Cody, Wyoming, and we went. We were basically we had a big cooler in the back, and we weren't going to restaurants. we just like stocked the trunk with stuff like provisions, and we had a cooler and all that crap. So we were just like eating lunch on the road with like just like ham and cheese sandwiches kind of thing. And but yeah, we like went to stock up in like Cody, Wyoming, and like I think we were the only ones in the store. Like we went to a Walmart, it was like we're the only ones in the store with a mask. It's literally like business as usual.
Damn,
Yeah, it was
that
crazy.
must have been so surreal after like, living in places where it's like everyone's like masking up and being safe, and then you're just like in this bizarro land where people are like, COVID's a myth.
Totally, yeah, it's a hoax.
5G.
It's a hoax. Yeah, no, it was a joke. It was a
Oh,
joke. It was like it was totally messed up. It was totally messed up. And like, even when we went to Yellowstone, it was well, not even before Yellow, like we were at like one of the like prominent Yellowstone campgrounds in Montana. Maybe it was Idaho. I can't remember. Whatever. But it was packed. Like there was like standing room only in this campground, and nobody was wearing masks. Like
holy
the people
shit.
behind the counter, like they had masks, but doing the chin strap thing, they didn't have it over their face. It was like it didn't exist. It didn't exist. And I mean, there's no wonder why like the COVID is skyrocketing in that part of the country now. But
And this was June time frame, right?
yeah, this is the end of June. June
Wow.
20th, I think, is when we set up. So yeah, it's just like in terms of like shooting, it was like normal. It's just like taking a drive. It was pretty wild. Um, the 4x5 stuff. I mean, that's sort of like my fine art stuff on the side. It's always just me driving around anyway, just seeing something cool and pulling over. It was a little hard because I kind of like I'm the one that planned the trip. Uh, my girlfriend is usually the one that does a lot of the planning. She's really way better at it than I am, and it took me
Yeah.
like 2 weeks to like sort all this out. Um, and I kind of like scheduled like blocked off times like South Dakota. Like I wanted to spend a lot of time in South Dakota and a lot of time in Iowa. Those were like the two states I really wanted to spend a lot of time in. And it was just like basically like pulling over, taking some shots, driving on to the next spot, pulling over, taking some shots, driving on the next spot with a really loose agenda. With the only agenda being we have to be at this place tonight by by evening. And a lot of times we were rolling in at like 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock, rolling into the campground because I would waste a lot of time taking pictures.
That's fair.
Yeah,
So what was the draw to South Dakota and Iowa? Like why specifically spend more time there?
because I actually hadn't spent much time there.
Oh,
Yeah, so it's funny. Like I'd actually been across the country a bunch. I've been in most of the states. Like I'd actually driven through Iowa, I'd been in Montana and Idaho before, but never really spent any time there. When I was really young, I did a hike in Montana. Like I was like in high school,
okay.
and did a hike across Glacier Park in Montana, and it's like a 10-day hike. And that was but we the drive out and then the drive back. So I mean, I spent some time out there, but never really spent a lot of time like as an adult out in that part. I did hit a bunch of the Southwest on multiple occasions, but never really with the agenda of just taking pictures, and just never really had the opportunity to spend a lot of time there. Like everything, I've always been drawn to the Southwest, so it's like I wanted to kind of totally change it up. What is
No, it's
that?
Brian Brooks popped in and he made this shirt with my face on it. So I just like,
Is that you as a kid?
this is me as a kid in my dad's Volvo.
That's pretty awesome.
Man, that's cool. So I've never actually spent a lot of time in South Dakota or Iowa either.
Well,
Um,
really, because like think about it. What is there to see in South Dakota or Iowa? There ain't much, right?
so
Like
what
there's no
did
like
you actually,
touristy stuff to go to. I mean,
but did you see anything interesting in the extra time that you spent there where you're like, wow, I'm glad that I
yeah,
spent time?
a ton of cool stuff, but it's not like Grand Canyon cool. You know what I
I've,
mean?
I've never I've never done the Grand Canyon. I've always wanted to go, but I did like Lake Mead. I
Lake
found
Mead's pretty badass.
I found Lake Mead really interesting, especially with like how crazy far down the water line is, and just that stark contrast between like where it used to be to where it is now, how it's like
Mm-hmm.
all chalky white. Like I took a couple shots on my Bronica of the lake with Ektar.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of fell in love with Ektar on that because like it looks so good. Like that yacht club where it's like you could see where like the shoreline used to be and where the boats are now. Like that was wild.
Yeah, yeah.
And the Hoover Dam was kind of humbling.
So that was also on the agenda, but we also didn't have time. You know, it was
Uh,
like that was like I think that was like probably the biggest mistake of the trip was just spreading out the mileage. Like to do like we really should have just hauled ass to like basically South Dakota and spent all our time in South Dakota, Iowa. Like spent like a solid week in South Dakota and Iowa, and then just hauled ass home. Like we just basically tried to spread it. I tried to spread it out too much. So it was like we hauled ass basically to Montana, and then basically we were just kind of like, okay, well this day we're doing 300 miles, the next day we're doing and basically it was like 300 miles every day, but 300 miles is still a long way to drive.
yeah,
Um,
that's like 600 some kilometers. That's a fucking mighty trek.
yeah, exactly. So it's in that regard, I was a little bit off the mark in terms of um, doing the.
Oh, there you
Uh, yeah, I got a weird.
go. Oh, sorry. No
It's
worries.
like I keep getting these spam phone calls. It's crazy. Political season, man. They hound you. It's like brutal.
Yeah, holy shit. I tried to watch a little bit of the vice presidential debate last night and I had to turn it off because I was just like, Mike Pence is like an evil religious robot.
Yeah, he is like a robot. It's really strange.
It
It's
was
really
creepy. It was just really creeping me out. It was just like he had like that slow dragging it out. Nothing actually means anything coming out of the face hole. It's like sucking everyone's life out, you fucking monster.
totally. Oh my god, it was brutal. I started watching it. I was just like, I was done. Like I got 10 minutes in. I was like, I'm not doing this.
Yeah, I think it was about like 10, 15 minutes for me, and I was like, no, I can't do it. And like even I avoided the first one, and then I caught like the last section of it, and then I regretted that I tuned into it because I was like, oh, man, I just so. Anyways, back to the fun stuff. So, what was your like most like when you think about the road trip? What was the part that was like your most favorite memorable part of the adventure?
That's hard. It's hard to say because it was just like, I mean, overall, it was super super cool just to be out there and like, and having no agenda other than just taking pictures. What you got?
What was your favorite picture that you took?
You'd have to ask. I don't even know, dude. I don't know. There was so many good ones. I did some of my best work when I was out there. It was like
Really?
unbelievable. Yeah, for sure. I mean, some of the, one of the things that was here's one of the things that was really hard about the COVID thing. Um, of all the things, like I didn't wanted to do a bunch of portraits because that's really what I do. Is like I'm a portrait photographer, even though like the majority of my fine art stuff is landscapes or just crappy old architecture. Um, so like finding portraits was really hard, and the fact that you couldn't like just be super outgoing and talk to people, that was really hard. Um, even though people weren't, even though people weren't like really believing that COVID was a thing, they sort of like I think the underlying theme was that there's a pandemic and they were not hanging out with people,
Yeah.
you know. Um, so that was really hard. There was definitely, I mean, I met some cool people, but at the same time, like it still felt rushed or stressed or um, it was just really hard in that. And, like I wanted to spend more time with people, and it was really difficult, um, just because like the COVID thing.
Yeah, I was kind of curious about that because like I did a really short trip through the Midwest last year, like through Oklahoma and part of Kansas. And I was a little bit blown away. Like at first I was leery, like not being a white person driving through those uh, those back roads. Um, but I was surprised at how friendly the people were, and it kind of like I left that experience being like, fuck, I really want to go back with like a nice camera and just collect stories from these people and get a portrait from them and like compile like a book of like portraits and stories because um, man, some of these people had like fascinating stories that they were like so willing to share with strangers.
Oh, totally. Yeah. I mean, it's coming from New England. Like I grew up around here. Like I'm from New Hampshire, but lived in Boston for, you know, 23 years. Now I'm back in New Hampshire, but it's like people don't say hi to each other. Like if you're at the grocery store, like you just pass through, and
Yeah.
it's like you're more apt to hear like a fuck off than you are a hello. Because like that's the Boston way. It's like,
Can you do a fuck off with a Boston accent?
well, maybe at the end of the tequila, I will be able to. um, but it's like, I mean, it's just crazy. Like, yeah, like Boston. It's one of my favorite memes is it's a picture of New York City, which is like the grid, and then a picture of Boston, like an overlay of the map of Boston, and it's
Yeah.
like a spaghetti, and it says like, shit, I forget it, but it's basically like in Boston because fuck you. It's like then nobody cares. It's like fuck off. But it's yeah. So I mean, it's totally different out there, and it's. I think it's some of it's a little shallow. I think that especially down south, like it's a shallow niceness.
Yeah.
They'll be nice to you, but they don't really want to engage. But they're just doing it out of politeness. But I think in the Southwest, people are actually totally willing to hang out and talk and chill. Like it's totally different out there. But like Texas, Oklahoma, like those places are awesome. Like
Yeah, I kind of know, like I have a few Facebook friends now from like the Midwest trip that kind of like that was interesting that I have these like older Midwest people that message and chat me up every once in a while to be like it was great interacting with you, and I'm like I ate at your diner one time and now we're like homies, so this is but yeah, so I was kind of curious like it's too bad that you weren't able to do some of that with this trip because COVID.
yeah, and also my girlfriend is high, she's kind of high risk too. So she's just got some kind of like, I mean, she's totally healthy, but she's like one of the people that has like the underlying issues that could possibly put her in the hospital. So
Yeah, like
um,
immunocompromised kind of thing, or
what's that?
like immunocompromised.
No, not immunocompromised, but just like I don't want to get into her medical history, but it's like yeah, but whatever. The point is that she's high risk, and it's like, um, so we were just super nervous about that. It was also before we really knew that much about it. Really, I mean, think about it. It was like pretty early on. Um, I mean, this is like, so I'm trying to think of like the timeline of COVID. It's like really the shit hit the fan in like the end of March, right? Like that's when things were really shutting down. Like Vegas, we basically canceled the trip when Vegas closed, and that was like March 21st. Like Vegas is like, yep, we're closing the doors. So we were like, okay, we're canceling the tickets, we're canceling the flights. So March 21st, so March, April, like so, yeah, the end of March. So well, let's not count March, but April, May, June. So you're 3 months in, and people were still hoarding fucking toilet paper, right?
Yeah,
So it's like we didn't really know what was going on back then, and now it's like, um, people were a little bit more relaxed. Like as long as you wear your mask, you're fine. As long as you don't touch your face, you're fine. It's a lot more chill, and so I think doing it again, I'd be a lot more apt to talk to people, or seek people out. But also the fact that we were like they were so callous about it back then, or like out in the Midwest, they just didn't give a shit.
yeah,
Like that kind of freaked us out. So we were like, we were convinced we were gonna catch it. We were absolutely convinced. We were like, we just hoped that we hoped that when we caught it, it was late in the trip, so we were able to get home. That was
yeah,
really the plan. Like we got a COVID test right before we left, and we got a COVID test right when we got back. We were negative both times, thankfully. But we wanted to just totally be sure that when we caught it, we didn't want to travel if we were positive, and we didn't want to. We wanted to quarantine when we got home because we were trying to be safe. We didn't want to spread this thing. But yeah, like I think yeah, Brian Brooks, he was talking about like why couldn't you talk to folks? Like just to kind of extend on that, like I mean, I'm trying to think of like an example. Like so, one of the times, like definitely I did get some portraits out of the trip, right? So I did actually talk to people, but generally people were pretty apprehensive, and even though like they didn't believe it, they were still pretty apprehensive. We were in trying to think of what town it was. Like It was, I keep screwing it up. It's not Burlington. It's like, I think it's Bennington, South Dakota.
Okay.
And there's a Bennington, Vermont. So I always screw it. Or there's a Bennington and a Burlington. Maybe it was Burlington, South Dakota. I always screwed up because it was one of the cities in Vermont, and it's like one of the B's in Vermont. And I always just forget which one it was. But anyway, this tiny little town. It must have been, it's like one of those towns you roll through, and it's like population 15, right? Like it's that
Yeah.
small. So we're driving like these dirt roads, and we roll up into this town, and I park, and I pull out the camera and start to take some pictures, and people coming up and talking to you, and I was kind of like wanting to talk to them, but they didn't really seem to want to engage. And but I went, so I saw the one farmer that didn't want his portrait taken. Like he hung out. And he's just like, "Hey, what are you doing?" Not in like a mean way, but he was just totally like checking me out. Like I'm standing there with a 4x5 on a tripod. So he's like,
Yeah.
"Hey, what are you up to?" Like you don't see this very often. And here I am with New Hampshire plates on an old Lincoln in this middle of
Yeah.
nowhere town. So, but so he didn't want a portrait, but he introduced me to the lady that ran like the country store that we were parked at. And so I went in there with a mask on. I said, "Oh, I'm wearing my mask. We're traveling through." She's like, "We're not worried about that." That was literally her response. It's like, are you kidding me? Like I literally just flew out from New Hampshire to California, drove across the country to get to South Dakota, and you're not worried about, you know, me delivering COVID to your little town? you know?
Brian's response is very appropriate there.
I didn't
He's
see it. Hold on.
like, he's just like, ha ha ha.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's I mean, they're
I mean,
nuts. They're nuts.
there's so much potential for risk there because there's the flight from New Hampshire to California. There's all the time you spent in California, and then all that time in Trent. And there, she's not. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, and it's like we stayed with, I stayed with a friend of mine, and they're like, she's still going into the office, and dealing with people. Here, her husband he's like an electrician, and so he's like dealing with a team of people. They have a roommate because they have a giant house in just outside of Irvine, and it's like they have a roommate just to like kind of share the mortgage. And he's like this retired dude, but he's all out and about, So it's like we could have caught it from them, and then just like stocking up on stuff. We're going to this grocery store. Yeah, like we just got off the plane, going to the grocery store, like going to the Walmart to get like the cooler, all that crap. It was just crazy. And, coming through Vegas, like even going through Vegas, like we were like driving the strip in Vegas, and maybe 20% of people were in the masks.
Damn.
Yeah. They made us walk, to get to the room, you have to, of course, walk through the casino. And maybe 20% of the people in the casino are wearing the masks. It's crazy.
That's. I mean, Brian's like population 15. That would have been that would have been kind of hilarious if like, well, not. It would have been actually quite tragic if like you wiped out the town.
Exactly. Like if
It's
they
like,
contact traced it back to me.
yeah, exactly. It's just like everything was fine in Bennington until that damn Lincoln showed up.
Exactly. Exactly. Leaving my mark.
Yeah, I mean that's a new legacy for the Lincoln of sorts.
Exactly. Spreading COVID across the country via the Lincoln.
Oh man, like it's such a weird. This has been such a weird year dealing with just all the stuff. I was having an interesting talk with a friend though that's like an archaeologist and like a historian of sorts, and um, in their academic circles, what they've sort of come to is that this is year zero. This is
Yeah,
sort of like
exactly.
this is year zero, and this is sort of like we're transitioning from the world that we used to live in that is never coming back. So all those
Hmm.
people are like, oh, I can't wait for things to get normal. This is normal now. This is our
Yeah, no, because you know, I mean, I definitely blame the administration for all the craziness, but and exactly, it's just like it's. I mean, I'm speechless, honestly, like how bad it is, and this
yeah.
isn't going away. I mean, this is going to be like, I mean, it's so ingrained in our society at this point. It's the new flu, you
Yeah,
know.
it's the new flu, and so we're like, this is year zero, and next
Hmm.
year is going to be one AC.
Yeah, exactly.
And it'll be
Yeah,
like one after COVID, and like
one
we're
after COVID. Yeah, exactly. And
we're
it's
starting
just
one.
yeah, and it's like much like the flu. I mean, it's already they're saying now that you can catch it again because obviously it's a virus. It fucking mutates. So we're going to be dealing with this forever, and maybe it's going to be less deadly in the future, hopefully, because maybe our bodies will acclimate to it, similar to
Yeah,
we were acclimated to the flu. But nonetheless, it's still like it's insanity. Like, and so we're gonna like we stocked up on masks. We're gonna have like I'm gonna be wearing a mask on a job for forever,
yeah,
for the foreseeable future. Like, um, like the professional photography thing, like it's killed my business. It's killed it. I mean, I sort of like made a comeback through some hops and like sort of transitioning, but like I'm doing side work again, like totally outside of photography because I can't support myself on photography anymore. And I mean, I was like, this was my year. Like I was gonna have a banner year, but thanks to fucking COVID, it's all in the toilet.
yeah.
But, no, I mean, I'm not trying to make a pity party. It's just it is what it
No,
is.
no,
It's
I'm
like,
not. I
yeah,
didn't think it was coming across as a pity party at all, but it's just like it's interesting to hear you share that because like this is not like single to you. Like I think this is a reality for maybe several people that are listening right now, and thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people
oh
that
my
are.
God, yeah. People
Oh,
lost their job, lost their business. I mean, think about like, so I mean, to talk about one of the projects I'm doing, which is like it's kind of like an eye-opening thing. In Manchester, New Hampshire, just north of me, it's the longest double dead end in the country. It's called Elm Street. I used to cruise it as a kid in my Mustang 50, my 1982 Mustang 50 or 81, whatever. Anyway, my little muscle car, and so I've been doing a project on that, just photographing up and down the street. And the first time I did it, I'm walking down the street and it's like business closed, business closed, business closed. It's like closed permanently because of COVID. And it's like all
geez.
these people are in the same boat that I'm in, and it's like they just couldn't like if you're a restaurant and you're struggling as it is, I mean you're not going to survive that. Like how are you going to survive that?
Well, and yeah, it is interesting because like up here in Toronto, we just
Thanks, Brian.
Brian's the best. Yeah, I gotta like give mad love to Brian Brooks. Like he's a fucking true gem. And Underdog Film Labs, all the American peeps on here. If you shoot 35 mil, if you shoot 120, if you shoot anything film, hit up Underdog Film Labs. It's Brian's lab. He's one of the co-captains there, and
Brian, you do 4x5?
everything.
I'll wait for that
Oh,
response.
do you do 4x5 there, Brian? He'll catch up to it in a sec. But yeah, it's like up in Toronto. It's been weird because like they just opened everything up, like say like a month ago, and the economy is starting to roll again and everything, and then they sent kids back to school, and then we started getting spikes, and they've legitimately announced like we're in our second wave here
Oh yeah, totally, totally.
in Toronto and in Montreal, but we're in the second wave. They're not shutting anything down because they just got everything open back up again. The last thing that the government wants
Thanks,
to
Brian.
do
I'll hook you up.
is shut all the shit down. So it's like at a time where they want, or well, at a time where they should be like, starting to lock us down again to avoid mass spikes. Like we're getting up towards of like 700 new cases a day in Toronto right now. Um, they're not doing it yet because they're just like, let's just see if people could behave because we don't want to hurt the economy again. So let's just y'all just stop being dicks
Yeah,
and COVID. That'd be great.
it's crazy. Like
Fine things.
so I have friends in New Zealand, and I mean that's a whole other story. But I was down there for like a month a couple of years back, and good friend of mine that lived here now lives. He's from there, and he lived here for a little bit, and then I met him here, and then he went back home. But I was hanging out with him down there, and so I talk to them all the time about this, and the way they handled it is obviously the way we should have handled it. They don't have COVID there anymore. Like there's some weird little tiny little hotspots that pop up, and it's all
Yes.
because of people traveling that they're allowing in, like people coming home from some other places. But it doesn't exist there anymore. I mean, they shut the border down, and I mean, which is hard for like a small island country like that to do. But They shut the border down, and they literally gave everybody a monumental check. Like my buddy, he runs a construction company. It's small. He's like 3 people under him. You know, he has like 3 guys that work for him. He got a check for something like $7,000 or $8,000 New Zealand, and they said like, stock up and stay home. Don't go out. We're shutting everything down. And they shut everything down for like a month. Like you were allowed to go to the grocery store, but that was it. And the grocery store was open like short hours. They weren't letting people in. Like they were only letting like small amounts of people in at a time. So there was like lines outside, but like equally spaced lines. People were like being like, "You're infringing on my freedom," blah blah blah. You know, everybody was wearing the mask, doing their thing. But you know what? Now they don't have freaking COVID, and their economy is back to normal. You know, like the crazy thing is, I'll say this and then let's get off this COVID thing. As much of a piece of shit that Trump is, he could have been a fucking hero if he just did the right thing. Like, think about this. Like, if he, I mean, not a hero to us, but you know what I mean? Like a hero, like in terms of like, he would have been a total martyr in that he would have like saved the United States from COVID. You know, like if he just did the right thing, shut everything down for the month, and then like had everybody do the right thing instead of being like so obstinate and like anti-mask and everything like that. If he just said everybody like do the right thing, and then all his idiot followers would do the right thing along with everybody else, and then we probably wouldn't be in this situation.
Well, but see, here's the thing. Here's the thing, though. Sorry, I couldn't help that. This guy has like the most proven track record of never being able to do the right thing. Even if it's right, someone could be like, serve him the right thing in a platter. It's like all you have to do is just pick this up. And they could serve it to him as like the most delicious hamburger in the
it's
world.
like here,
if you take a bite out of this
it's like
hamburger.
read these words. See these words?
Yeah,
Read them. Read them.
exactly.
See this camera? Just look at the camera and read the words. Read the words. And it's like it wouldn't happen. No, I mean, I realize it. If we were in an alternate universe and Trump was actually a moderately normal human being, which obviously is not the case, but if he was even like a one little iota of a normal human being, it probably would have gone a lot better.
Yeah, it could have. And this is it. I don't know. It bums me out because like so many people that I love and care about live on the other side of the border that I'm on, and you know, it sucks that I'm not able to see them, but it also sucks that like you have an administration that honestly just doesn't give a shit about life and people.
No, I know, and it's funny. Like, I mean, we could go on about politics forever.
Yeah,
but you know, it's so, but they're like, but the whole pro-life thing. It's like, you know, I mean, they talk about pro-life and all this bullshit, but like, okay, so I'm a woman, I'm a young girl, say I'm 15 years old, I get knocked up, and I have this kid. Like, yes, I'm forced to have this baby. Now what? Like, there's no services to take care of me. I'm a 15-year-old kid. Like, I can't like have a full-time job. You know, take care of this kid. Like, it doesn't happen. Like, and it's and their response to that is, oh, you should have been practicing abstinence. You shouldn't have had sex. Like,
well, maybe
like what rational world do you live in? You know?
Maybe you shouldn't have wore that outfit you wore that night you went out.
Exactly.
I mean, fuck. Anyway, like that shit's just so bummer.
Oh my god.
Brian says that Underdog Labs does 4x5, 5x7, 8x10, and it's all with dip and dunk, which is
that's awesome. I got a bunch of color that I got to do. I don't develop my own color. I develop all my own black and white, but I don't do my own color.
You should hit up Brian.
I will.
You know, they're super sweet.
Brian, if you're listening, hit me up, message me, and then I'll connect with you. But yeah, so back to the trip. So what else is there to say about the trip? So yeah, I mean, I met some cool people. Like the guy of the few portraits that I did. Actually, there was like 4 or 5 portraits that I did, and I mean, there was some pretty cool stories. Like I was in Blackfoot, Idaho, which I got like several really good pictures of. So I saw this crazy old grain silo, and I pulled over, and I'm walking, like girlfriend's just hanging out in the car because she didn't want to check it out, and so I'm walking out onto the street to take this picture of this grain silo, and I see this off in the distance, like this guy in this doorway, like this old loading dock, and like I can already tell it's like this crazy old like 1-story mill building, super cool looking, like debris and stuff outside of the door, and like these old painted numbers like on the door, super cool. It's like I already knew. I was like, man, like even before I saw the dude in the doorway, I was like, I want to get a photo of that doorway too because it's a super cool doorway.
Yeah.
So, but there was this crazy big white dog, and the dog is like, and this is probably like, the dog is like 200 yards away. like really far. And it's like I could hear him like, "Roar, roar, roar," like screaming at me because I'm like kind of like walking into his eyesight. And then like the guy comes out and like kind of talks to the dog and shows him out. And so I take my picture and it's like, you know, I'm gonna go check that out. You know, I'm gonna go take a picture of that doorway and maybe like get that guy to come out. So I walk over there and the dog of course starts barking. And the guy comes back out to see why the dog is barking. I'm like, hey man, like you were checking me out. Like you like I'm over here like doing my thing. Like you know what? Like do you mind talking to me? Like, you know, I'll take a picture and do some stuff. And the guy was like, well, it wasn't me. It was my boss. It was actually looking at you earlier. He's like, yeah, I'll go get him. That guy didn't want his picture taken. So the boss comes out and we ended up having like an amazing conversation, like 20 feet apart. but he was totally like him and his wife came out and like had this amazing conversation about what he does for work. And he owns this crazy, it's actually like a seed cleaning factory. Like he does like these, trying to like remember exactly what it was. Basically, he grows or like maintains these these seeds to replant like the grassland in like South Dakota and Idaho and stuff, like all these like original grasses that no longer exist. Like he's in the process of like reseeding with like original grasses from like he says, yeah, I have seeds that are like 120 years old, and I'm like reseeding like Idaho with like this wide open land, and it's called Grim Seed Factory. It's like super cool, but it's like he's like, you know, hanging out and talking to me, and I got an amazing portrait of him. Like I shot off like 5 or 6 shots of this guy, you know, and it's like that was like a super fun time. I was like, this is, and I was psyched. This is my first portrait, and I was like yeah, there's like psyched. This is why I'm doing this. Like this is the shit, you know. This is why I'm out here. It's just like to hang out, take pictures, meet cool people. But basically, that was like not the last time, but it was like every other interaction with that was like every other interaction after that wasn't quite as good.
Okay.
Oddly, like while I was in Montana, we were in Bozeman, Livingston, Montana, and we were just walking around. I just had my Mamiya on me. I didn't have the 4x5. And I started petting this dog that was hanging outside this pizza shop that was getting like, not a pizza shop, but it was an Italian place that was getting renovated. And I'm like hanging out petting the dog. And this guy comes out and is like, yeah, man, you know, like this is what I'm doing. This is what we're doing. Tell him the story of driving this car back. And then the guy comes out that's like renovating the shop. And I'm talking to him and I ended up taking his portrait because he was like the main dude of the restaurant that he's building. Crazy thing is, he's a good friend, like a really good friend of a good friend of mine who lives in Boston, who used to live in Montana.
Whoa.
Yeah, like I was on the phone telling my buddy about the trip, and I was like, yeah, I took this photo of this really cool guy that was opening an Italian place in Livingston. He's like, oh, really? Like, a good friend of mine is opening a restaurant in Livingston. And I was like, hold please, and I pulled up the picture and I sent it to him. I was like, is this the dude? I was like, he's like, holy shit, that's my friend. Blah, blah, blah. It's totally crazy. Like such a small world, and it's super wild.
The world is really small. Like that's one thing that I've definitely noticed with like traveling and interacting more with people on like Instagram and stuff is just how tiny the world really is.
Oh yeah,
like meeting people and navigating things. It's been a hell of an experience because it's just like, you know, when I grew up in a really small town, well, a smallish town, like I think it was like 4,500 people. And getting out of there, I thought like, you know, Vancouver was like a monumental, oh my God, this is like super overwhelming. And then as I started traveling, I'm like, the world's actually tiny.
it's really tiny. My craziest small world story. I mean, this is like super, not intense, but it's just really crazy. And it's not even like super, super crazy, but it's pretty crazy. So, when I was out in New Zealand, we went on all I did was drink beer and ride motorcycles. That's all we did. And my buddy had to go back to work. He took like 2 weeks off to hang out with me, and then he had to go back to work. But he basically just gave me the keys to his bike. And he's like, yeah, man, have at it. And so I drove. He lives in Auckland, and I drove way out to check out one of the black sand beaches. And I'm totally lost because, of course, like my GPS doesn't really work very well. Like I'm limited on data, and so it's like, and the roads are like, it looks totally like a maze out there, and like no, it all looks the same. It's impossible to find your way around there. So yeah. I'm close to the beach, but I still can't find it. So I'm on his bike, and he's like a chopper guy, and the bike is like super loud, and it's like blah 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 blah, you know. and I'm like trying to like look at my phone, and I'm like, fuck, I can't figure this out. So I shut the bike off, and I'm trying to like figure this out, and I hear like up in the like I'm parked next to this huge cliff. It's just all green, and I could see there's kind of like a porch up there, like, but like you can't really see a house, or you just sort of see the porch through the trees. And I hear like, hey man, hey, you lost? And I'm like, yeah, I'm totally. I'm trying to get to I forget where, like what beach it was, like Peacock Beach or something like that. And I'm like, yeah, I'm trying to get. He's like, hi, you from America? And I was like, he's like, yeah, yeah. Well, what part? I was like, at this point, I was still living in Mass. I was like, yeah, I'm from Boston. I'm living in Boston. Oh yeah, I lived in Boston. I was like, no way. He's like, yeah, yeah. You know where? Well, there's like in Boston, there's a spot where the Mass Pike is the main highway that goes from basically Boston out to West Mass. And it's like this turnpike that goes all the way out to. It's actually like if I were to visit you in Toronto, I'd be on the Pike almost the whole way.
Yeah.
It turns into like it's I-90, but in Massachusetts, it's called the Pike. But he's like, yeah, you know this shopping mall? It's over the Mass Pike. I was like, yeah, the Star Market. And he's like, yeah, I used to live right next door to that. I was like, that's crazy. Like, I'm literally in the middle of nowhere. Like, this is like hyper rural, crazy rural, like no houses. He was like the only house. I happened to be parked next to his house. I never even saw the guy. It was just like, he was like yelling from like 100 yards away from his porch. And he's like, yeah, I lived in Boston, blah, blah, blah. This is where I lived. And it's like really close to where I was living to at the time. It's like totally wild. But that's my craziest small world story. Like that I would meet this guy that lived in Boston, close to where I lived, was currently living, in the middle of nowhere in New Zealand, like literally the opposite side of the globe. Like I was, living here, and it's like here. It's totally crazy.
That makes such a trip. Oh man, I love hearing stuff like that because it's cool to like get out and travel, but then like have those like little things that happen that just like connect you back to home and stuff. Like
Totally.
I mean that's
I was going through a lot. Oh yeah, it was
that,
it was kind of a rough time in my life, and it was just like it was good to get away, and it was kind of nice to like have that connection. But yeah, man, like New Zealand, Jesus, like I feel like the rest of my life I'm just gonna be trying to get back there.
I've never been, but I would love to go. It's definitely on the list of like places to travel. Like I mean it's whenever we're allowed to travel again, like I miss
Exactly.
travel.
Yeah, we were supposed to go back this year. 2020 was the year we were going to go back to New Zealand, but obviously didn't happen.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of shit didn't happen.
Yeah, it's like the big pause. Just like we
It
just hit the pause button. That's it.
it kind of is a big pause, but I think like for some of us, it's a good time to like regroup and reset and come up with a new plan. Like, it's definitely made me a lot more grateful for the community that I'm part of and that I have, even though I can't see most of them. Um, it's been a hell of a year, and I think like as frustrating and upsetting it has been, um, I really think there will be some good that can come from it, um, if some of us can just stop being dinks to each other.
Totally, totally. I mean, it's. I mean, yeah. I mean, I'm trying to look on the positive side, and I mean, yeah, it's been really hard. Like like not having any money, and then, but yeah, at the same time, it's like I did this amazing trip. It's like
Yeah,
I sort of like was able to segue. Like it gave me the push to like get back into fine art and like get shooting. Like, I mean, I probably shot. I shot hundreds of shots of 4x5, hundreds throughout
I,
this time.
dude, I can't wait to see those too. Like, I mean, yeah, you took this trip, and like without that trip, without this time, I would have never met you or known who you are. So it's
Oh,
like
absolutely, yeah,
all
absolutely.
this all this stuff has connected us, and also like extending out into like things like the BLM movement and all of that. I don't think that type of activism would have happened if we weren't siloed in our homes and paying attention and being enraged by something like this. So
Yeah,
uh,
because you think about like, um, if someone gets murdered by the cops, it's like it's I think that you would definitely make the news, but there's so much other stuff going on that it would just kind of like
there,
get swept along into the news feed, and the next big thing would have happened. But because there was nothing going on, they were scratching to find stories, and that's why like
exactly,
the George
and
Floyd thing like blew up, and it's like, Everybody
the
was
George
starts
Floyd
paying
did.
attention, and it's
Yeah,
like it's amazing that we actually like took the time to pay attention. Like this is the shit that's actually happening in our country.
exactly. But we have 10 seconds left, and I want to say thank you so much for joining me, especially as things started to get really heated there. I love all you guys, and I'm looking forward to next. Thank you so much, Pete.
Good
Thank you
thing,
so.
man. Have fun.
Thanks everyone for tuning in.